guys, Oliver here. Just wanted to do a quick video reacting to Andrew Berry's end of year press conference, exit presser, whatever you want to call it. I would have liked to, done this a bit sooner yesterday, straight afterwards, but unfortunately didn't quite have the time. But now I've got the time, I thought I'd hop on and give my thoughts. So I think first and foremost, the most obvious thing we should probably talk about regarding this press conference is that Deshaun Watson has apparently suffered a setback in his Achilles injury, which will extend his recovery time. I suppose first let's address the elephant in the room. It does feel rather fishy, if we're being honest. Berry claimed that the setback was discovered during, the end of year medical, and that it was news to Watson as well. Quite an odd situation, but who knows? Could just be purely down to chance. I'll let you guys make your own mind up on that. But in terms of obviously what it means for Watson and the Browns, I said in the previous video I did a couple of weeks back about Watson and what they would do with him moving forward. In my opinion, that he would be back next season, as they essentially pay him to sit at home after, faking a quarterback competition, despite having no real intentions to play him anyway. That's something that I think Andrew Berry kind of confirmed by, saying that the setback hasn't impacted their strategy with the quarterback room this offseason. This setback just means they no longer have to fake the quarterback competition because Watson won't be healthy to start the season anyway. He's already lost the imaginary quarterback competition before it's even begun. Now, in a vacuum, this might sound like an odd thing to say, but I don't really care. The setback is actually great news for the Browns. As I said, they no longer have to go through the process of a quarterback competition and instead just have a real quarterback competition, with whatever guys they do add to this room this offseason. I expect it to be at least 2, maybe even 3 guys. Complete turnover in that room, I would not be surprised. And, the biggest positive is no longer having to waste a roster spot for paying Watson to sit at home, as well as obviously, any potential insurance compensation from his contract. With this setback, meaning, Watson will probably start the year on PUP, the Browns have no incentive at all to activate him during the season. They save a roster spot, and if Watson does spend the entire season on the PUP list, then the Browns would receive insurance compensation from his contract. Now, I'm not 100% certain on this. I am no Jack Duffin, but I think it's about $44 million in insurance that the Browns would receive as relief on Watson's contract if he was to miss the entire 2025 season because of injury. The financial relief would also be for 2026, not 2025, but it's financial relief nonetheless, and obviously makes moving on from his contract easier. I said they would sit him all year and, cut him with a post-June designation in 2026, and that they would likely restructure him before they do that to essentially add a dummy year at the end of his contract to, help spread out the cost. Now, by getting 44 million in relief, they might not even have to add a dummy year. I think they still will, in my opinion, just to spread the cost and remain flexible regardless. It is something they like to do. But, as I've said all year, the Watson contract isn't the Alcatraz that people have made it out to be. It is, of course, not ideal, not in the slightest. But if the Browns, are smart about how they move on from the contract, I do think they can, entirely prevent themselves, from letting the contract cripple them and remain at least somewhat competitive. I do still believe that is the case. And this setback for Watson with potential insurance relief only enforces that even more. I am going to be talking more about Watson, his contract, how the Browns can, remain competitive despite it. All the way through the offseason, we'll be doing loads of videos on that, as well as the Browns salary cap situation as a whole. I do have a very, very special guest joining me during the off season to help break, this all down. And in case you are wondering who, I have already hinted who it is. But yeah, to wrap up the Watson stuff, it was already over. It's now just officially over, I suppose. And it's great to see the organization no longer speak about him, like he's the franchise quarterback. It was pretty clear in this press conference that, Andrew Berry knows that it's over with Watson. He spoke about how the trade hasn't gone as they anticipated and, that they will be positioned to pivot moving forward. And, he did this whilst admitting that they aren't afraid to take big swings. And with that, I just wanted to say one last thing about Watson for now. Whilst back in 2022, I wasn't someone that wanted Watson, purely because, as you could probably guess, the off the field issues. It wasn't something I was comfortable with, as I know a lot of Browns fans felt the same. But I completely understood the move from a strictly on the field perspective. The Browns felt that they had a roster to compete with teams like Kansas City, but just didn't have the quarterback. You can make the jokes all you want. I'm sure a Baker Mayfield video will be coming in the off season as well. But that's how they felt, and they made a move to try and improve the most important position in football. Now, again, strictly from a football perspective, I'm never going to criticize a team for actively trying to get better. Hindsight is 2020, and the trade was a disaster. But I do think we've gotten to a point where, it does get completely lost in the sauce a bit. People act as if, the Browns traded for this version of Watson, a cooked player who can't stay on the field. I've been consistent on this all the way through and will continue to be. It's the reason, why I've made it very clear that I don't think Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski should lose their jobs because they made the trade, but instead should be judged on how they move on from it. And so far, they do appear to be taking steps in the right direction, in my opinion. Andrew Berry also made it very clear that they will not be trading Myles Garrett, and that it's in all of their intentions for Myles to retire a Cleveland Brown. His exact words were that he expects Myles, will have a one-way ticket from Cleveland to Canton. It's something I'm, of course, happy to see. If you've watched any of my videos throughout this year, you'll know how much this Myles Garrett discourse has bugged me. To be honest, it's just been ridiculous, in my opinion. I just don't even understand how it was even a conversation. You don't trade players like Myles Garrett. He is a franchise player. He is the Cleveland Browns. In my opinion, he's on the Mount Rushmore of Cleveland Browns. And to take it even further, I truly believe in the Super Bowl era, he is the best and most talented player to play for the Browns. You don't trade guys like that. The Rams didn't trade Aaron Donald during some of their bad years. It's just not something you do. The compensation that you would even get would not be remotely close to being worth the value that Myles Garrett is. And even if you get 2 first-round picks back, you're not going to find another Myles Garrett in the draft. You're just not. So I just don't think any trade compensation can match his value. So I just think even the idea of suggesting it is silly. And whilst I do understand the sentiment behind, you know, not wanting to waste his career, want him to, see him go somewhere else so he can win. It's the Joe Thomas argument. But if I'm totally honest, I do think it's a bit of a loser mentality. Um, of course, this is a loser team. They don't deserve any benefit of the doubt when it comes to winning. But at the end of the day, you're never going to escape that if you just feel sorry for yourselves and continue to, think that way. Um, if you just want to trade all of your best players away because you feel bad for them, you're never going to get to where you want to get to. So again, while I do understand it, of course I do. It's we all care about Miles. We want to see him do well in his career. Um, but unfortunately, I'm too selfish, shall I say? I care more about I care more about Miles Garrett on the Cleveland Browns than I do about his feelings in regards to, maybe if he never ever wins a chip. Of course, that's the hope. We hope he does. That's why I want to keep him, because I think he gives you the best chance to go and do that. So yeah, I just think, I've said it all year. The discourse, in my opinion, has been ridiculous. And whilst I do understand some of the sentiment, I just don't think it's conducive to winning going forward, and it's just not something that the Browns should ever consider. And I am very happy to see that Andrew Berry feels the same. He has no intentions of trading Miles Garrett. Miles Garrett, in his exit presser when he was asked about, what's going to happen in the off season, he said, and regarding his contract, he said there's something in the works. I said last off season, not on this channel because I only started it this year, but on Twitter, if you follow me at UK Browns NFL, I tweeted all during last season how I believe that the Browns would make Miles the highest paid defensive player in NFL history this off season. So maybe that's what he was hinting to. Who knows? But good to see Andrew Berry say this and say it publicly and quite clearly. As long as Andrew Berry's in charge, Miles Garrett's not going anywhere. So great to see. Um, he also spoke about Nick Chubb, obviously with his contract being up. I know fans want to see a commitment to Chubb from the team, but we have to be realistic and understand that the NFL is a business and negotiations need to happen. You can't just give a player and his agent all of the leverage by publicly stating that, you'll do anything to have that player back. I would absolutely love for Nick Chubb to retire a Cleveland Brown. Of course, I'm so bad with this camera, guys. It's because it's flipped on the way I record it. So every time I'm pointing this way. So let me try that again. Um, but yeah, so hopefully you didn't laugh too much at that blunder. But what was I saying again? Yeah, I would absolutely love for Nick Chubb to retire a Cleveland Brown. And I'm sure that Andrew Berry would love so as well. But he is the GM of the football team and has to act as such. So I wouldn't take it, you know, too serious that he's not publicly, committing to Chubb or um, saying how much that they're going to do anything to get him on all of this stuff. In the end of the day, when negotiations are happening, you've got to keep some leverage, even if that's for, your favourite player. Um, so we'll see, obviously, what happens with the Nick Chubb situation. But I wouldn't take a non-public commitment as a dismissal. Um, Berry also touched on the injuries to JOK and Mike Hall. With JOK, it still appears to be no major updates. However, Berry did say that the hope is for him to return in 2025. Hopefully, that is a vote of confidence within, the information that he does have. Um, but either way, thoughts are, of course, still with him. And I just hope that JOK, the person, is okay before I even care about JOK, the football player. With Mike Hall, he, of course, suffered what appeared to be a devastating right knee injury in the final game of the year against the Ravens. Just brutal injury for a player who was having an outstanding rookie campaign. Thankfully, as it would appear, according to Andrew Berry, the injury, although serious, is not as serious as a lot of us initially feared. It appears to be an MCL tear, which they aren't sure yet if it will require surgery. And Andrew Berry did say that the recovery timetable is months, but he does expect him, to be ready for the start of the 2025 season, which would of course be excellent news for the Browns. It does suck that he'll probably, I say probably, most definitely miss training camp, given that he's missed, time in the past year with his suspension as well. Just a lot of interruptions already so early in his career. With a full off season, full healthy off season, this off season, I would have had incredibly high hopes for him going into next year. With how he performed, just in the second half of this year when he came back from the suspension. But hopefully it doesn't set him back too much, and he's able to attack his rehab and be ready to start the season. Because I do think that the Browns have a real player on their hands with Michael Jr. And finally, I do personally think it was good to see Andrew Berry take responsibility for this season. He echoed the sentiments shared by the fan base, and was pretty clear in his messaging, that this season was unacceptable. Now, whilst my confidence in Andrew Berry has somewhat dwindled this year, I do still believe in the core principles behind this regime. And I think they deserve the chance to try and navigate this situation. But that would do it for me. That was kind of my main thoughts that I got watching Andrew Berry's press conference. It was about half an hour long. Of course, I encourage you to go and watch the press conference yourself. I do think it was one of the better press conferences we've seen from Andrew Berry, since he's been here. So encouraging stuff. Good to see, obviously, the sentiment on Miles and the stuff like that. Take responsibility, and obviously, I'm sure you're most people watching as well are probably happy about the Deshaun Watson news as well. But as I said, we'll spend all off season talking about Watson, not just Watson, but in terms of how the Browns can move on from the contract, what it's going to mean for the team, salary cap implications, all of that stuff. And as I said, I have a very, very special guest joining me to help me break down Brown's salary cap. Probably the best person in the business to do that. So when that does happen, I obviously look forward to bringing that content to you guys. But again, that would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description, in the bio of my channel, to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and as I always say, even if I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing week, but most importantly, go Browns.